everybody, it's another day, and we're back here at X Raised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. Today's episode will be about policy and strategy, which sounds simple on the surface, but as you'll hear, it's actually the backbone of the quality of an organization, its sustained success, and ultimately how future ready it really is. And joining us again, who's basically, I would say, my co host at this point, has spent decades helping organizations align people, processes, and performance through accelerating continuous improvement. He's worked across industries globally, driving total quality management or TQM, ISO certification, and helping organizations truly equip their workforce and workplace for long term impact. Coming back here is the Managing Director and CEO of ACI Global and e-Quip, Ian Erskine. Hi,
Hi,
good
Miles, and good
morning.
day to everyone that's tuning in and listening to this podcast. And yes, trust everyone had a wonderful weekend. And yes, I had an interesting weekend coming back from a bit of a scare with my cancer journey. And but when it's all said and done, I was the goose. And it was interesting. I'll just quickly tell you the story because it's quite inspirational, actually. I find it an
Yes,
inspiration
it
for
is.
myself. I remember the doctor saying to me that, one of the medications I'm on, he said that you can test it yourself. And, if you want to slow it down a little bit, do that. And, well, I slowed it down. I literally went off it. And eventually the symptoms came back, and it took me a while to realise, oops, got to go back and back onto it. And
Mm.
so I went and had a test, and it did come back with a negative result, with a positive result, sorry. And but anyway, I kept on it and then did another test, and now everything's negative and back to positive again.
Yes, love
So
that.
yeah,
Mm.
so all normal, and yeah, so
That's really a scare, but turns out to be a good news. So thank you for sharing that, Ian. Really inspirational. But we still find new ground to cover. We're here. So let's get straight into it because this one flips a pretty common belief on its head. We often hear that strategy drives success, but you're challenging that a bit here. So at the foundational level, Ian, how do policy and strategy together actually determine the quality of an organization, not just its performance?
yeah. Well, see, this is the interesting one, and because I often think back in reference to strategy, because strategy alone by itself won't work. You have to really um, use that as key, and you need to use the ability to use policy to support that. Okay, so the strategy is the key, as we said, but you can't do it alone. And again, I liken it to when you get up out of bed in the morning. You need to be able to get out of bed enthusiastic, ready for the day ahead. Have a strategy, have your directions in place. How you're going to achieve that strategy, and yeah, so that's where policy comes into hand. So strategy alone won't work. You need to have your policy in place. Again, when you get out of bed, you have a plan in place. And basically, that's what we call that. And obviously, where we come in, we talk about ACI, accelerating continuous improvement. And, if you like to deliver it in this case, it's the strategy, and through ongoing continuing review of all policies and procedures, the organisation's strategy becomes a living and vibrant journey.
Mm.
And not just for top management, but all people within the organisation. So it's a collaborative partnership between
Mm.
people and the organisation, the owners and directors. And that's where we get to the point of true accelerating continuous improvement. And,
Mm.
for this to be successful, ongoing sustained success and environmental sustainability, people must have an understanding of all policies which need to be reviewed, and they need to be assessed and evaluated on an ongoing basis. And going back to what we said before, ACI, that's true ACI.
Yes. It really shifts the focus from just having a strategy to actually living it through policies and understanding it, as you said. And I really like the idea of it being a living journey, not just something sitting in a document somewhere. And building on that, Ian, you mentioned something that really stood out. Policy isn't just a documentation, it's rather a behavior. So let me take that a step further. When we talk about policy, it's easy to think of it as paperwork, but you're pointing to ethics, culture, values, even customer experience. So, what does a well crafted policy framework actually look like when it's shaping how people behave day to day?
Yeah, that's a great question, Miles. And shaping how people behave is key. Because if people's lack of understanding or simply having switched off habits will change, and in some cases, this can quite often have a negative impact on their understanding of policies, which often impact on the organisation's strategic direction. And you know yourself, if you're not feeling that well, or you've had a bad night, and you do get up and start the morning's journey, there are times there when it comes straight to the point where, wow, hang on, I've got to do something slightly different, and reorganize or replan, and that's the way you get that enthusiasm. That's where you get the enthusiasm to be a high achiever. And and again, I often take this back to our daily tasks, because on a daily basis we have our strategy, how we're going to achieve the day's tasks and things like that. And and you have your little points within your own cognitive thinking, which drive you through achieving your little task during the day. And again, I take that back. That's just like a living organisation. And the review of the policies is critical. And this is where ACI Global 360 Professional Development Review PDR profile comes to the forefront
Uh-huh.
in driving ACI of people, accelerating continuous improvement, and their ongoing understanding of the organisation's policy framework and its strategic direction.
Mhm.
And that in a nutshell is key.
At the end of the day, if people don't connect with the policy or even understand it, it's just going to be noise. And knowing the ACI Global 360 Professional Development Review, or the PDR profile, I think that brings in that continuous feedback loop, which is something I think a lot of companies miss. And that naturally brings us to something you've always emphasized, Ian: people. How should top management balance compliance and structure with empowering people's competence, capability, and innovation so policy doesn't feel restrictive, but actually drives accelerating continuous improvement and people engagement?
Interesting. And we talk about this quite often, very regularly. This
Mhm.
comes from wanting to conform rather than comply.
Yes.
The want and the aspiration to be involved in the organisation's strategic direction through its policy framework will encourage the organisation's people. And that's what you want. You always need to be able to be looking at your employees, working with your employees, encouraging that aspiration. And again, we go back to the involvement of the 360-degree PDR profile. And one of the discussions between top management and their people within this process will lead to ever increasing sustained success, because one on one, you bounce ideas between yourself. So if you're the junior manager and you're talking to your senior manager, you're bouncing things off them, they're bouncing things off you, and this is how you both drive your inner passion to become a high achiever.
Mm,
And gives a greater degree of aspiration and high achiever status for all the organisation's people.
mm,
And in that is a very critical process where we need to assign specific roles and responsibilities so that the tasks get achieved to the highest degree of TQM, right?
mhm,
But even more than that, to the highest degree of self satisfaction of the people themselves, because that's where the inner drive comes through. Yes, you have your cognitive thinking, but your inner drive to achieve your aspirations will come from
Mm.
that 360-degree process, bouncing ideas off your senior managers, getting them to bounce ideas off you. And it could be, wow, Ian, have you ever thought of stepping up one notch
Mm.
and giving yourself that chance to explore that opportunity that we've been discussing? This is
Right.
how this all comes to be.
And that shift from compliance to conformance, Ian, feels really more human, more intentional. And that connection to CPD, the continuous professional development, and those one on one conversations, I think that's where real growth happens. And again, not just ticking boxes. And once that people foundation is in place, the next challenge is keeping everything aligned as organizations grow. When leadership moves into strategy, there are so many moving parts from products to people, technology, partners, processes. How do you ensure all these competitive factors stay aligned with the organization's identity and long term direction instead of pulling in different directions?
Yes, well, you've hit the nail right on the head. It's the competitive factor which is key. And when it's all said and done, we are all competitive in what we want to achieve, and we compete not we actually compete with ourselves to challenge ourselves to
Right.
continue to do better, and hence we compete with each other in the workplace. You know, wow, you think you can do that well? I'll just demonstrate to you that I can do that even better. And things like that, and that leapfrogs across to a number of different categories where we talk about products and services, for example, unique, first to the market,
Mhm.
offering standard products or services. People, for example, demographic development and changing values, cultivating an image of an attractive employee, addressing capability and flexibility, for example. Process, the policy framework, as we said, needs to be in place, and such areas of total quality management involving environmental sustainability, occupational health and safety, and wellness of all the people within your organisation, culture and values, in employment, innovation, just to mention a few. And we've put together this framework on now. It's now on our website, so people can go and have a look at it. Right. So
Mhm.
we'll provide that link. Now, it's worth noting here within the organisation's strategic and policy framework, it must be supported by procedures.
Okay.
And this is where you get the step by step process you yourself put in place for you to achieve each of your tasks. And quite often I take it this way, and people say, "Oh, goodness sake, I don't have to write everything down, Mr. Erskine or Urko." And I say, "No, certainly, you certainly don't. But it goes back to more of the more detailed processes and directions that you'll take during your day at work. Sometimes you do need to have that step by step process." And I say to most people, what generally happens is it eventually goes up into your brain, and that's where your strategic thinking starts to kick in and gives you that direction. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, going back to where we're talking about the strategic and policy framework, an organisation's knowledge and technology, for example, needs to be set in place so you have a framework. And technology changes. Now, we've got that loud and clear for everyone to see with AI at the moment.
Yes.
And I say to people, look, have a look at it, understand it. Don't just take my word, because basically I'm coming from this at a completely different way. I'm challenging people. Yes, if you want to use it to do a search or you want to use it in other aspects of your life, that's fine. But what I challenge you to do is challenge yourself, challenge your thinking,
Okay.
cognitive and
Thinking.
strategic thinking.
Mhm.
That will all come naturally if you allow it to happen.
Uh-huh.
If you switch that off And you say, oh, no, no. Because now I'm hearing people say, oh, no, no, I just use AI to do that. I use AI to do this and I use AI to do that. And I said, well, you want to be careful because you're becoming part of the artificial process. And they say, artificial? Well, that's what it's called, artificial intelligence. In
Uh-huh.
actual fact, it's not artificial intelligence. We've discussed. It's actually mining your own intelligence
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't have that knowledge. It only gets that knowledge from everyone else putting different ideas into the data centers, and then it drags it out, puts it into a whole open sphere, and spits it out and says, "This is you." And
Mm-hmm.
I say to quite often, "Well, that's fine if you use it, but please, for goodness sake, check." Because sometimes if you just flippantly say, "Oh no, that's fine," it could be sending out an AI generated email.
True.
Just be very careful.
Yes.
And my big thing at the moment is people sending AI generated emails, and it's picked up the name of the person it wants to send it to, but
Uh-huh.
the at the footer it just simply says this is from the team.
Yes.
And now I'm going back to these people. Well, yes, but who in the team am I speaking to?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I go back to your own personal self. It's manners. When you're talking to someone, you want to be able to understand their first name and then you address them by their first name, and that's how you get that personal uptake, right? But the most important thing about it, that's where you get the cognitive thinking coming in because your brain has switched on and said, yes, it's Miles I'm talking to. I'm not talking to the team. I'm not talking to anybody. It's Miles with that beautiful smile, with that ability, with that smile and the glow in your eyes, right? Which you remember, and I remember. I'll
Mm-hmm.
remember forevermore the ability and the privilege, my dear, to be able to talk to you on a weekly basis on our topics and things like that. And I say to everyone, where you really stand out is you do your homework on the topics that we're discussing. You go and you do your research and things like that. And that's why you have that ability to portray in your face the gleaming eyes, the booming smile. That's demonstrating your cognitive thinking, and
Mm-hmm.
this is what comes out and must come out in the strategy and policy framework of an organisation for it to achieve its sustained success. But above all, that sustained success has to flow back and say, well, that sustained success is for all our people so that I
Mm-hmm.
know, okay, look, if Miles wants to jump off and do something slightly different, the ability of the organisation, which is X-rays, to have been able to put you on that platform, put you
Mm-hmm.
on that pedestal, so to speak. You together have worked on that process for you to achieve your high aspiration, right? So that you continue to do better all the time. And
Yes.
that's where this comes into it. And now there are other factors which need to be considered here as well. Partners, the place where you're going to form your business, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, this is very challenging. Will your business be solely online or on the internet, or will you have a place where people can go to meet?
Mm-hmm.
And pricing's another one. And I guess it's a classic for ACI Global because I've always had this philosophy that quality should not be expensive. Quality needs to be going back to the basics. Do it well, do it right the first time. Have a want to always do it the correct way. Don't verge into that grey area. And this is where I try to expose to everyone the ability of understanding TQM. Do it once, do it right, and have that philosophy. Stop
Mm-hmm.
yourself if you're starting to get into that grey area where you might make a mistake. And it's even, look, even the other day, I went to go down a set of steps too quickly. I hadn't remembered my own ethic, 3 points contact, hand on the rail, feet,
Yeah.
and thinking, right? And I did stumble, but I managed to pick myself up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where we all have to have that inner challenge, that aspiration to do or go that one step better all the time.
Yeah, and that keeps us going. and strive harder. And quality, again, doesn't have to be expensive. I agree. And that's a great breakdown, by the way, Ian. Tying it back to policy versus procedure is really great. Though it may sound simple, it's something a lot of businesses overlook, I think. And when you bring in things like ISO equipped quality TQM software and performance indicators, it really becomes an efficient system. And let's talk about where things go wrong because not every organization gets this right from the start. A lot of them struggle with weak foundations in policy and strategy. So, what are the early warning signs that something's off? And what should leaders do immediately to reset and build a more quality driven, sustainable organization?
Well, this is a very, very interesting and telling point, and this actually puts the icing on the cake because one of the first signs is the organisation, including its people, become reactionary. And that one word says it all. You become reactionary. And again, let's take it back to a personal side. You will find, if you get out of bed in the morning and you start to move through the morning, and all of a sudden you're beginning to all I'm doing is running around like a chookless head with it being cut off. And what am I doing? You're reacting from one point to another point to another point, and I don't know whether it's age or maturity, but I find myself, I've actually got to stop, and I literally physically say to myself, stop, take a look at things around you, come to terms, clear that there could be a lot of mail coming in, clear that one message out that's disturbing you, and even to the point sometimes get up, go away from the office chair, go and make yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and then come back, and you'll find you've got a slightly clearer head. Right? That's called reactionary. Now, the other important thing is the strategy should reflect the identity of the organisations, its context, long-term perspective, and this is where it's critical that all short and medium-term objectives for both people and the organisation should be key aligned in lockstep, right? And this is what we will discuss at our next episode: objectives and targets. And
Yeah.
finally, top management, including their people, should make strategic decisions regarding the competitive factors, as we spoke about, and they need to be discussed with ongoing reviews
Use.
and must be undertaken. We must stick to our agreed objectives and targets, try not to stray from them. Now, that's an interesting point because sometimes we will begin to stray from them because that's where your aspiration is challenging you. Wow, I think I can actually do that a slightly better way. Okay. And that's where the challenge, the aspiration then steps in. And by ongoing review, this way you will ensure the quality of the organisation and further drive to ongoing sustained success and environmental sustainability will be achieved both for the organisation and their people.
Mhm. And we better put the spotlight on that idea of organizations becoming reactionary because that hits home, especially in fast moving industries, and bringing it back to alignment, review, and future ready leadership. It shows that sustained success isn't accidental, it's rather built deliberately. And you really have to design quality from the very beginning through policy. I learned from you, strategy, and people. So thank you so much once again, Ian, for breaking this down and for really reinforcing how important it is to build strong foundations through total quality management, people development, and of course, continuous improvement.
Yes, and to close it off, it
Mhm.
all comes back to ourselves. It comes back to people, and you've
Well
got to
said.
have that notion within your own well-being is quality matters.
Uh-huh.
Do it once, do it right. And yeah, look, during the day, if things start to come adrift, then
Uh-huh.
stop. Just
Yeah.
just stop, take a deep breath, and regather your thoughts. And again, this is where your cognitive thinking kicks in, because that's where
Mhm.
it actually challenges you. It says, yes, you can do better.
Mm-hmm.
and it guides you in that way. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where that comes from.
Yes, we indeed can do better. Thank you for that reminder, Ian. And what a wonderful story you shared earlier. Thank you for being an inspiration to everyone here and to everyone listening to our podcast right now. Yes, you, if you'd like to strengthen your organization, whether it's through ISO certified courses, ISO certificate in sustained success, or getting your teams ready for ACI Global certification, connect with Ian and his team now through the links below. And just a quick one before we go, keep your eyes open for this episode because we're streaming it as well on the ACI Global website, so it will be easier for you to catch it there too. Until next time, this has been your host, Miles and Ian. Remember to stay focused, driven, and inspired with X-Rays.